All right, welcome to today's episode of the Australian Lawn and Garden podcast. Last time we had Ash on the podcast, it was a 3-hour-long episode, and I felt like it wasn't long enough. And so we've got him back. How you going, mate?
Good, mate. Thanks for having me back. Don't know what we've
Well,
got
I got to
left
say,
to talk about.
I mean, we've probably been talking for an hour already. Phone call before this in preparation. For those who, you probably have read the title, but this is going to be Ash telling me how I'm an idiot, essentially. And I'm happy for that. I'm welcoming it because I feel like I'm clueless about garden design. And the way I think about it is I look at a good garden, I'm like, that's a nice garden. But I couldn't tell you, other than the obvious things, like, oh, there's some healthy plants and oh, they're nice. I couldn't tell you what the designer did to take it from, firstly, blank canvas to something that's amazing. And secondly, something that's amazing to something that's just truly off the charts. Like, I can notice that it's good, but I don't know exactly why. It's like a good meal. I don't know if you're like this, Ash, where you go to a restaurant and you're like, this tastes amazing, but I don't know.
It's coming from the guy that lives off Zinger boxes.
I mean, it's true. I don't know what they do to make the Zinger box so good. Do you know what? I haven't had a Zinger box in a while, though. I mean, you've got me tough. I know what I have for dinner now.
I honestly don't know how you don't have KFC as a sponsor yet.
Do you know, I'm trying to... The other thing I told you about that I said I shouldn't talk about in the podcast just before because we can't talk about it too early, but I do want KFC involved with that thing. I won't say anything more.
Okay.
But, I mean, I'd love... We'll see, but I highly doubt that they're going to get involved. But anyway, back to the thing is, like, you go to a nice restaurant and you're like, you know, they've cooked this, whatever it is, whatever you eat, the pasta or something like that, and you're like, I can make pasta and I can make a pasta I like, but I don't know what they're doing that makes it this good. And I feel like that with landscape design sometimes, where I'm like, I know how to cook, I know how to make. I was telling you this off air. Like, I look at a garden, I'm like, those plants are yellow. I can fix that. That hedge is uneven. I can fix that. I can, because that's my world. But I don't understand. So we're going to go through some photos and just talk and be like, hey, this is what makes a landscape design great, or this is what makes it average. These are mistakes people make. Hopefully this is a great resource for anybody who's starting out in design, who's maybe a bit of a DIYer and they want some tips for their own yard, or just people to relate. Sound good to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, other than that introduction, I should say a little bit for a few people who don't know. You've been on the block. You've done some great stuff. You've been working in this field since you were about 15 or 16 or something like that, right?
Yeah, even younger, 14. I started my pre-apprenticeship and then went full-time at 16.
And this is your world. People go jump on your Instagram, which I have in front of me, which is Ashley_James_Gardens. You've got quite a big following on the Instagrams. People absolutely love your stuff. There's a style as well. I like your style. We talked about that before off air, but people really like your work. 33,000 people following. Pretty good. So I'm just trying to set it up for people who never heard of you. It's like we haven't got a guy down the road who does the occasional landscaping job to talk this through. But let's get some photos on the screen. And let's just... No pressure. If you stuff this up, no one's going to respect you for the rest of your life. That's it. Yeah. Your children will disown you. Your wife is, calling a divorce lawyer. No, on the screen. This is impressive, mate. I've gone the wrong way. Let's start here. This is your most recent job that we've talked about. And for those who are listening, we've got a blank canvas, dead grass, sand, rubble, a fence. Nothing much on the left, and on the right, we zoom in. We've got beautiful. What will you call these? What's that style of paving there? Not cobblestone, is it? That's different.
It is like a cobble style, but they're out of the actual bluestone pitches. So a cobble is kind of just the top of those, whereas they're, some of those are 250 deep. They're quite big actual bluestone pitches, like bluestone blocks. So I don't know what it's like over there, but here, if you go into Melbourne, like all our foundations of all our old buildings are built on these old bluestones.
Nope, nothing like that here.
Just sandcastles.
Well, you got something called concrete.
Yeah, okay.
Or cement. Which one's
Yeah.
which? Which one's the hardened one? I always get that wrong.
Concrete.
Yeah, we got that.
Okay.
So, I mean, we're showing up how bad my knowledge is already. I'm like, I don't know what the paving is.
You're not off to a great start.
No, but that's why I need this podcast, right? And hopefully my stupidity is what's the word? It's relatable and people can also learn along with me. So I look at that and I go, okay, on a surface level. So for those who are looking, like it's at its core, it's just a path, and there's just some plants on the side. But it looks so much nicer than that. Like if I was just to put a normal path in and just put some plants on the side, using that space, it wouldn't at all be close to that. You know what I mean? Those classic pavers everyone's got, you know, some yuccas and agaves, as we talked about before, that we love so much. That style. So when you looked at this on the left here, and you're going to this property, what are you looking at to? What inspires you to get that result there? What goes through your mind to go from, okay, obviously we've got to make a path, we've got to put something there, but what's a bit of your thought process behind all this?
So on this one, so we finished this. I mean, I finished this a couple of days before Christmas. These photos were taken literally only a couple of days before Christmas. Now, usually, and I've spoken about this in the past, one thing that I really get jealous about with interior designers is they can finish a project and they can photograph it straight away and it looks amazing. Whereas I wanted to photograph this one straight away because a lot of blood, sweat and tears went into this. However, and you know, the photos do look beautiful, but however, in 6, 12 months, 24 months time, when that's grown and that's all cascaded over the pathway and all the dichondra is filled in between the gaps there, like that money shot down there will look amazing. So all of our projects are client-led. Everybody has different needs and wants for their gardens. This one here in particular, so this is down on the coast, and this one here in particular, they had all these bluestones which they had pulled up and saved from their original garden. So this was a knockdown rebuild. Obviously, they demoed the whole garden, and we've come in and finished off around the new house. So they had all these bluestone pictures which they wanted to use. Now these, you know, you can buy these for $5-7 each. They're very expensive, and that adds up very quickly.
Wow. Yeah, it really would.
Yeah. So they wanted to reuse these, and their idea was just to put a pathway down the middle. I love the bluestone pictures. I think they look beautiful. They've got character and a beautiful texture to them. But to just have them running down the side of the house, I thought that's going to be quite a fair bit. It'll probably be a little bit overwhelming. We've got to break that up a little bit. So as you can see, we've put in that custom-built water feature. Now, where that, you can't see it in the photo, but where that goes back to on the house is actually their dining table. So they look out onto that.
Right.
So I wanted it to be a nice feature from inside. So although photo-wise we're looking at it from here, we need to remember that this part of the garden is viewed from multiple different rooms throughout the house. And the dining table and open kitchen being one of the main ones that looks out onto that area, I wanted there to be a nice feature. So I've come up with this. I designed that water feature, and we had that custom built. But I also wanted it to be a little bit more in a way that you kind of interact with it a little bit. So then I created a reel that runs through the paving, and then that actually goes to a pond on the other side right in front of the dining table. So it gets pumped back up to the start there, it overflows into the spill, it runs through the reel, and then it comes down to the pond in front of the living dining area. And then to break up the overwhelming grey blue of the pictures, I've broken that area up by putting in the dichondra repens, which will fill in between all those gaps, and that will give you like a green carpet, so that when you're looking from inside the dining room, you're just going to see this massive green with water running, overflowing and running through that. And then the plants on the side there, they will cascade over and soften all those edges a lot as well.
Friends, I hope you're going well. I'm in the warehouse because I want to show you this. This is, amongst all the mess, the new background for the podcast for 2024. And maybe even slightly after Christmas, we might do a podcast with this. But I want to show you it because we're going to make some epic content for the next year. I've got a lot of plans. Can't tell you about them now, but they're super exciting. And if you want to be part of that, jump on the Patreon, keep supporting it. Genuinely, all this stuff is being paid by the people who support on there. I want to show you this as well. This is my fertilizer rack with all the Mash Play products from the Lawn Shed. Now, you can only get these products, which are exactly the stuff I'm using. You can see it's in the rack there. If you get a trade account, so sign up to a trade account, jump on there. You'll be able to get access to that sort of stuff because it's not on the normal Lawn Shed account. Say you heard about us through the podcast and go through there. If you're looking for fertilizers, wedding agents, all that kind of stuff, that's where we grab everything. They've been awesome supporters of the podcast, and it's partly what allows us to do the cool things we're doing now. Let's get back into the podcast. How long does it take you to think of this? Is this like pretty instant in your head? Things are firing and it's here's some ideas. Or do you have to go back and mull over it for a couple of days?
Every project is different. Every site is different. But when I'm on site and I'm actually viewing the yard, even if it's for the first time, in my head, I'm viewing the whole project complete. So I can see the end result, the finished result, and what it's going to look like. So I'm looking at that photo, that finished photo going, look, it looks nice. It looks beautiful. But when those agastaches grow and they cascade over onto the actual bluestone pitch itself, I know how much better that's going to look. So you've got that photo on the left-hand side, which is the before. As I'm on site taking that photo, I can already visualize what it's going to look like. Then we go to the second photo on the right there, where that's the complete project, but I'm still looking at that, visualizing what that's going to look like in 2 years' time, once it's all established.
Yeah, and do you have 3D designs that you do, just 2D stuff? Because I know some people do it, but it's pretty time consuming, and maybe doesn't.
We do. So we provide 3D renders on our design packages, and I should have got. I didn't even think I should have sent them over to you as well, so you could compare it. But we don't actually do them ourselves, so that's outsourced because they are very time consuming, and it's very costly to make them because the computer's got to sit there all day just pumping out these images, if not longer. So we outsource all that, and we have a really nice fella, Tim, and his company, and they do our renders for us. So we will design it all. We'll get all the planting schedules and everything like that done. And then once we know the clients are happy with that, we send it over to Tim. He'll produce the renders, and then that's put into the final package of our designs.
Well, this is just a laneway part of the garden, right? We started this because this is that came up, right? But there's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, this is just the service entrance. There's a clothesline up the other end, and then those doors go through to the garage. This is not a high traffic area. This is not a place to go and hang out with your friends. This is not an area that's going to be used on a regular basis. However, it is viewed from multiple rooms throughout the house, and that's a double-story house. From the bottom layer and the top layer, you can see that side of the garden.
Now, you also talked about how the plants, when they grow, they will cascade more and this and that, whatever. I've heard of some people doing this, especially for small tube stock. Say they've got some land. I know you've got some land. They might buy tube stock and then kind of have a propagation part on site where they can grow these things larger and have them more established for their clients. Because you're right that these beautiful designs take time to mature and to come to fruition. Is that something that you do at all? And if so, is it worth it for the client? Because obviously there's extra expense and time and all that sort of stuff to have, all those plants be so mature from day one.
the majority of what we work with are perennials, and perennials will grow so quickly that it's not worth growing them up to be larger on site in a nursery. So all those plants that you can see in there, and you can see like the pink flowers on the right hand side from the agastaches, they're, you know, 500-600 tall already. In wintertime, they would have been cut back to absolutely nothing in their pots. And that's put on that much growth since winter. So in 6 months' time, you've produced that. And the other thing with those is I don't want to get them used to being in a pot, because as soon as they hit the ground that they're going to stay in, they'll bed and they'll grow really, really quickly. So I am jealous of interior designers because they can take a photograph straight away and it looks complete. However, my gardens being heavily planted out with the perennials, within 12 months, I can get really good photos. Within 6 months, I can get really good photos. Within 12 months, I can get really good photos. And within 2 years, it looks like a mature garden because they grow so quickly. So I do want to look at growing at home, only just because they are quite easy to strike and propagate, and I could, you know, mass produce a lot of the ones that I use on a regular basis. But to on-grow them from a size point of view, it's not worth it from that point of view with the perennials, because it's once they go in their natural ground where they're going to be staying, they'll put on so much growth so quickly. Whereas in the pot, they're very compacted and they don't really have the room to spread and grow.
What about like, is there common trees or larger shrubs that you, because you've got a style, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I do. I think it's probably like a contemporary cottage is probably the best way to describe my style. And then one thing that a lot of people do is the Buxus. Buxus is extremely expensive. Do you guys have much of that over there?
No, it's
too hot.
I've thought about, it probably is a bit hot. They do get sort of cooked, but I mean, they still grow. Like we've got one client who has a beautiful hedge under a tree. You know, and it depends on. I don't know if it's that. I wonder if it's a style thing. Like there's certain styles. We were talking before about like Bonnie Stacey, who's a designer over here that you get along with, and her style is just so different from that. And I think that's a little bit more popular over here, and maybe it's just because I'm more coastal.
I really like her. I mean, she's very clever, Bonnie. She's done like the ebooks and everything that she's created and that she sells. They're great for DIY people. You know, we talked before about where this podcast episode is going to be good for people trying to do stuff themselves. She provides a very cost-effective way for people trying to landscape their own place. And she doesn't just do it with that, I don't know what you call it, like dry climate. She doesn't just do it with the dry climate stuff. She also does like a cottage selection, which works great in my area. But I think you're right, because we have a thing called rainfall here, which we were talking about earlier that you don't have. So, that's probably a big part of it. Whereas, like, I love Port Douglas. You know, Port Douglas is our holiday destination. We love to go up there and explore and just spend some time up there. But I could never work up there because I would not know where to start building a tropical garden. It's not my thing. I can go to a resort and look at it and go, oh, that's nice and lush. And I feel like I'm on holidays looking at that garden. But it's not something that I could create easily.
Yeah, it's all style. You know, everyone's got their own little style. And then you kind of you start enjoying that, and then you go down that path, and you become more and more and more sort of entrenched in that. Not that you wouldn't want to explore more, but I guess confident would be the word. I feel like that's the case with my career. Like when you start out, you can kind of go down any path you want, and then you get to 10 years in the industry, 15 years in the industry, and it's not that you can't change, but it's not, how would you put it? You know this niche so well. Like I know lawn care for residential and garden care for residential, like maintenance, so well that for me to pivot into any design, I feel completely like I'd be starting on page one again. I'd be starting at the ground floor. I know I probably wouldn't be. I know there'd be a lot of things that would cross over, but you know, you kind of wear a rut in that. And just in the same way that you could probably in 6-9 months to a year become incredibly competent in a tropical design or to pivot, you know, I don't know. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, possibly, but I don't have the drive to learn it either, because like I'm probably set in my ways a little bit because I like my style, because I like to garden. So
Yep.
what I like with my style is it's like they're beautiful, but they're also productive gardens. So it's not just so most people, when they think of garden maintenance or lawn maintenance, they'll go to like a gym's. But you say gardener, for argument's sake, down here, and they just think gym's mowing. That's what they think. And I'm the complete opposite of that. If someone called me and asked me to mow their nature strip, well, no worries, it's going to cost you $1,000 because I have no interest in doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like, we don't do mowing, we don't do anything like that. I do horticultural work, but that could mean like planting and harvesting potatoes. That could be like, your traditional gardening type thing. And that's what we do with our gardens. They're filled with all the perennials and all the wildflowers, and they look beautiful, but a lot of them are productive gardens as well, where we're growing seasonal foods, and we've got orchards, vineyards, all that kind of stuff on there as well.
So back to the design part of it. Let's go on to the next photo here. Now this is from the other side. The angles of these photos don't quite match up, people.
But don't. Also, what you busted me very good on this one, which I didn't realize, but on that before photo, you can clearly see a clothesline, and on that after photo, you can Photoshop that clothesline out.
Did you actually Photoshop it out?
Yeah, because it looked horrible. I should have. You've just realized it's been busted. So
if you had not said that, I would have just thought that you had removed it.
Yeah,
you've busted yourself. You could have gotten away with this. You could have manipulated us all.
Well, gotta be honest with people. I mean, I want everything to look beautiful, but it's got to be practical too. People need a clothesline, and that's where it went. So now we've just created a very beautiful place for them to dry their clothes, and they'll have beautiful scents through them with all the plants underneath them as well.
I can see that you've got the. Is that a pool? That's an aircon. What's that?
Oh, that's the yeah. So there is an aircon unit over there, but it's the pool filter and all the plumbing and all the electrical.
So you've got that hidden behind this. Well, I like how you've kind of hidden it, but you've kind of not, because you've given it a different color. So it's kind of drawing the dark, in my eye, the dark color draws attention to the green in front of it. What is that? Is that a what tree is that?
Birch. That's a moss white birch. Well, there's a trio of moss white birches planted there. I always like to plant them in groups of 3. So our client had already painted the boundary fences on this property. The first thing that I do when I go into a suburban backyard is paint the fence. So you can see on the before photo there how he hasn't painted it.
Yeah.
And then you can see on the after, where I've built that screen, how it's got that grey across it. That's a monument grey. So that's a colour-bomb colour, monument grey. Any suburban block that I work on, the first thing I do is I spray the boundary fences in a monument. Because like you just said, as soon as we put greenery in front of it, it pops, it stands out, and it makes it look so much better. And the fence just disappears.
Fun fact, that's what colour our trailers are.
Monument.
Yeah, and I picked that because I knew, because it was a colour-bond colour, that it was always going to be easy to get spray paint cans.
Yeah.
And touch up nicks and stuff. But I like that colour. Like, it's a good. It's funny how like a grey can be good. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's certain colours, and this is completely off subject, but I look at some like interior design colours and things like that. I'm like, that is a nice green. How do people find that nice? Like, that's a nice grey. There's ugly greys. I mean, again, we're back to things that Luke's not good at, but I really I don't know how does somebody just go on the color chart on their whatever design app they're using, that's the green I'm going with. I'm like, how did you know that was good? What sorcery do you use? Anyways,
I think there's a lot of trial and error on that, but I do think that when it comes to your boundary fences, any kind of dark color, whether it's even, well, I'm not going to say spray paint your fences black, but like a dark color, because as soon as you put greenery in front of it, then the fence disappears and the greenery pops, and it makes the plants look amazing.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like some of those really dark, almost blacks, the charcoal or whatever you call it, or like even a really dark navy blue I've seen on the interior, like super dark, and there's just a hint of that blue in it, and you're like, it's not black. Black could be, I don't know, it could seem like a nightclub or something like that. But the slight change. Again, I don't know how to do that, but I do. When I look at it, it's like we talked about with the food before. Like I eat the food, I'm like, that tastes delicious. Don't know what you did to do it. That color looks amazing. I don't know why it looks amazing. But do you ever use mirrors? I know some people will put a mirror behind a plant to make a landscape feel larger.
So the project that we're looking at for the before and afters at the moment, that is definitely one of our smaller blocks that we usually work on. Mm-hmm. Where I'm based in the Yarra Valley, our clients are on usually a minimum of 20 acres plus. So for us, we don't need to use mirrors because we have all the space there. We have the mountains in the background. We have the borrowed landscape. But there's a lovely friend of mine, a designer, Fleur Harris. We're looking to do. She does. She's an artist and she does clothing design. And we're going to collaborate and do her front yard and backyard on her new build. And she's in a small spot in town, and I think I think she may have already picked it up. We're going to do a mirror on the fence there to, as you walk past, it will pick up the landscape and just make it look a lot bigger. We're not just getting a sheet of reflective glass and putting it on the fence line. We're camouflaging this with creepers and laid with plants and stuff around it. But it is a really good way to try and make your garden feel a lot bigger than what it is.
Yeah, I've seen some ones that, again, you don't even notice that they're there because they're behind something.
Yep.
But say you've got like your birch there. Mm-hmm. I should have said it was birch because I kind of knew it was birch. Whoops, press the button. Here we go. Who's this guy on this podcast here? But that birch there, when that's fully grown, it's that kind of plant. There's a few others that have that sort of feel to them, where maybe like if you're going back tropical, like a palm or something like that, where it's not a hedge, it's not a thick Morea or viburnum or something like that. There is light coming through, and so a beautiful plant. You're going to see the fence behind it, and you put it in a mirror, especially if they're. I've seen some of them be like not square, odd shapes or things like that. And you can't even notice. It just feels like that it's an opening to a different part of the garden, but it's not.
Yeah.
It feels like you got space, but it's not. It feels like the neighbor's house is ages away, but it's right there. So, anyways.
So, it's done right. I think it's a really good way that you can kind of add additional space to an urban backyard for sure.
So, when you're doing this, obviously you've got to use the path. There's got to be some practical side to it. Mm-hmm. Let's go to the next photo here. How do you get? Because you've got a bit of a transition from these bluestones to these tiles, normal pavers. Here, what do you call those?
So we've gone trying to tie it all in, and it's kind of like old meets new. So down that sideway, we've used the bluestone pitches, and then on these newer areas, we've used the sawn bluestone. So same product, cut differently. Colors tie in nicely.
What's the cost on an individual? Is that a paver or a tile? What is it?
Paver. So they're 30 mil pavers. So I think that they are 400 by 800. I think that's what we used on that project. Individual cost, I could not tell you. I get my designs, I send them over to the team at Granite Works, so I get a price. and then I haggle Jordan on a better price, and then we go from there.
Sure.
So individually, I don't know, but yeah, those pictures, I mean, they go anywhere from $5 to $7.
So what I was trying to get at,
yeah.
Well, they look expensive. I was just trying to work out, like, so in my head, if I had just continued with the old school variety that you had there, it kind of, that would have been obvious to me to do that and just continue with that. But it's same. And it's this kind of stuff that I'm looking at now going, oh, yeah, now I noticed it now that we're talking about it. I'm like, it does look fresh. It looks cleaner. The other one looked more looking for there, less designed, I guess, more overflow.
It's a rougher look. It's a rougher texture. It's got character to it. It's weathered.
Yeah.
And then whereas this is a very clean cut lines. But it's trying to tie it all in nicely, because we couldn't have the bluestone pictures down the side and then come to a white marble or a travertine, like a yellow travertine around the side here. It would just look silly. The reason why we haven't brought it around the corner with the bluestone pictures is because, yes, that alleyway looks beautiful, but it also needs to be practical, and you don't want to be having table and chairs out on bluestone pictures. It's not, it's a bit rocky. It's not what you want to be doing. So you can see in the corner there, we've got the fire pit area with the seat, and that's on a nice flat surface now. That has stepping stones that lead through to the pool.
Yeah.
And the same thing, in between those stepping stones, I've got the dichondras, which will fill out and soften that up. And that's what we've done with the bluestone pitches around the side. So completely different shape, completely different textures, but it all ties in.
I like the not bringing the lawn. I feel like bringing the lawn to the paver would have been obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Like not obvious, cliche. It's everyone's got that. And you've kind of, because the backyard, if I go back to the original photo, you could have just leveled it, right? Like got a bobcat in, made everything perfectly level. You've got that little step there, or even like a small gradient up. But you've got that. Yeah, tell me about that.
So that is a fly by the seat of your pants move, because when we actually went in there to look at the original site, everything was so flat that I thought, this is no dramas. We can make this work. The pool is obviously existing, and that had a concrete slab around the outside of it, which is put in by the pool company to hold it all in place. Now, our client had that pool put in before the house, because once the house was built, there was no access to get in there to do that. So the house was designed, the house was shot, he had conveyances come out, they shot the levels, and they put the pool in. Then they've built the house. Then I've come along and realised that there is a discrepancy of 65 mil. So the pool sat 65 mil higher than the outdoor al fresco. The reason why the pool sat higher than the outdoor al fresco is because from the house, there's a step down to the al fresco, and that is 65 mil. So I said to the client, I'm like, look, they haven't necessarily stuffed it up. They've gone off the wrong level. So our way of picking that up, but trying to still make it look good, was to have a step down from the lawn onto the paved area. And then we've added in the garden beds to break it up a little bit. And yes, it was one of those things that we kind of discovered along the way. And you'll find that on any landscape project, that once you start, you can have the best design in the world, but once you start, you're going to come across stuff that nobody anticipated, and you've just got to kind of roll with the punches and make it work.
Yeah, totally. But I think it's better in my head, at least. I mean,
I think it's come up well too. It exposes the steel, and then that looks nice. That core 10 gets that nice colouring to it. I quite like it. It's a very small space, but I think it looks really nice.
And again, people, when this is all grown, all these little dichondra here, the looks of it, and all these yuccas and agaves in here. That's a joke, people. I don't know, most people listening, they're going to be like, waiting for the Joel Barnett comment. If you guys don't know about that, listen to the other podcast. But anyways, I can't even tell. So are they salvias? No, they're not salvias. What's that blue thing there?
That one that you've zoomed in there, it's a penstemon. There's Russian sage. There is salvias. We've got ornamental grasses through there. We've got the dichondra that you picked up on. There's a lot of perennials and mixtures. We've got crepe myrtles in the background there.
That's us. Yep. What's this guy here?
We've got Rebecca's. We've got them. So there's a lot of different stuff in there. It's one of those things because it is my own project. I really like that after photo, but to me, looking at those dots of dichondra, I can't stand that. That infuriates me. I just want that to be full and lush. But we've had so much rainfall here since Christmas that I know in 6 months' time, the growth that's going to be on this garden will be huge.
Now, we got to talk about the soil condition and stuff as well. We talked about this in the last podcast about the difference between kind of landscaping for a price and landscaping for longevity is you're fixing up the soil. Now, this looks, I sent you some photos that I was driving before of the roadside in WA. That looks pretty similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, this looks almost like a WA lawn. What did you do for this?
This one, again, so I'm based in the Yarra Valley. For those who don't know where the Yarra Valley is, it's where the Borderley wines are. It's all the rolling green hills with all the lush vineyards. That's where I'm from.
Stop showing off. Stop having a brag.
The reason why I say that is because we have beautiful, rich, good growing soil out here. This being a coastal garden was completely different from anything that I've ever done. So our client showed me a photo of this pool preparation going in. This pool was dug out. It was 3 different colors of sand. And then on the bottom, it was just pure seashells. So as we discussed off air, drainage here is not an issue at all. I could pick that whole pool up, dump it on the ground, and within 5 minutes, it's absorbed into the ground. So we had to dig out a lot of sand to bring in a lot of soil to form up and create garden beds. So that was a bit of a challenge. I mean, the beauty was the digging was very easy. The downside, I said to my clients that until the garden is established, your watering bills are going to be quite high because it just disappears.
And then you get all this rain, so...
Yeah, I mean, that's been really good too. But then we have these hot days where it knocks everything out and everything evaporates, and we're not to the desert where you guys are, but it is very dry here too.
Well, I was actually going to say let's go back to the finished photo. I don't know if we see that side. We see a lot of silver birch here in Perth. A lot of these other plants are not that common. The crepe myrtle is obviously that looks like cooch to me. Got a lot of cooch over here, but yep, that's the variety of cooch. But even dichondra.
I wanted to use a fescue on that. Being a lawn guy, I don't know what your thoughts are on fescue. I actually wanted to use a sunlover fescue because these guys don't have pets. And they've got teenage kids, so we don't have to worry about ball games or anything like that. And I love sunlover fescue. To me, it just comes up so nicely. But I don't know, do you guys have that over there or not because it's too hot?
Oh, no way. I mean, ryegrass can survive under trees, but I mean, no, you only get warm season grasses: cooch, kikuyu, zoysia, buffalo, and the ratios on new builds, it's probably 40% buff, 40% cooch, and then the last 20% will be kikuyu and actually maybe kikuyu is a little bit more popular in some areas, but yeah, zoysia's pretty rare. It's not very humid over here. It doesn't do as well here as it has in other places. But look, the cool season grasses get roasted. I have the school oval we do is kikuyu, and kikuyu it's over here in our climate, it's the best for those large areas, hands down, because it doesn't quite go dormant in winter. I know where it's really cold, Kikuyu was horrible. People hate it, especially clayey soils, but it doesn't quite go off, which means it can handle the wear and tear through the winter months way better than cooch. But we get all this ryegrass growing through, and a lot of the common herbicides that you can kill ryegrass with will also knock your kikuyu. So I'm kind of stuck in this school oval to control it. But first bit of heat we get, the ryegrass just on the open area is gone, and under the trees it's still there. It's fine, no worries. But yeah, your cool season grasses here, just I don't see anybody other than winter oversows. Nobody's got anything. So I'm clueless. That was a long way of me saying I have no idea about fescues and bluegrasses and all that stuff.
Well, I think that's a difference too, and I think that's why someone like a design. See, I'm very much set in my ways, whereas I like what I do. I like the plants choices that I use, and I don't want to alter from that. But it doesn't work in Perth. It works where I am. It works in New South Wales. It works in Tasmania. It works in New Zealand. It's not going to work in your conditions in Perth. In saying that, a lot of the plants that I do use, because despite the fact that I've had a rain day today, so I've been in the office, it does get extremely hot and dry here. But I think it's a different kind of heat that you're dealing with. So a lot of the plant choices that I use, you'd look at my gardens, you could almost say that they're almost English, the way that they look. But a lot of my plant choices, they're from South Africa, they're from Mexico, they're from California, because they do well in the heat and they do well in the frost.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's just trying.
Well, that's the thing. Like that, we don't have the frost.
Yeah.
So it's just the heat and it's the extreme dryness. So,
yeah.
But back to the soil you're talking about. You've brought in a lot of good soil. Was that a compost that you mixed in, or a soil conditioner that you mixed in, or was that literally remove heaps and just bring in the pre-prepared end product soil?
I suppose kind of did a mixture. We took a lot of stuff out because this project was so far from home. I'm dealing with I'm dealing with suppliers that I'm not used to dealing with. So it was easier for us to bring stuff out and then put in a new organic matter. And then it looks like dirt, but the mulch, that's actually mulch over the top of it. But it's a compost mulch to break down and just to continually feed the actual garden itself. Because it needs, it's one of those things that you're just going to have to work on over the years.
And before we move on to the other things, I don't need an exact number from you, because obviously that's between you and the client. But for people who are brand new to this, I know that a lot of people might look at this and they will be clueless on how much this costs, and they'll be like, hey, here's 10 grand, what can you do? And the reality is that, like you're saying, those pavers, the $5, $7 each, obviously they had them already, but just to do that, how many were there? A couple of hundred by the looks of it.
Oh yeah, but even labor to install those is huge, because they're so heavy to cart them around and stuff. It's very time consuming. So I had this, originally I designed this project and I wasn't going to build it. I was going to have another team build it, and then we were just going to supply all the plants. And then, long story short, cost of living, design work slowed down a little bit. I ended up back on the tools building a lot more of my designs. But I think I had this one originally priced without the plants from another contractor. And there's a lot more than just in these few photos that we've shown. But the original price that came back from the contractor, I believe, was about 170,000 plus GST.
Right. So, and this is this kind of the work that you're doing? Would you say, on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of how expensive things could get? Because you could go super cheap, right? Like you wouldn't need to do this. You could just go, let's leave the soil and scatter some cooch seed and pray, and there we go. That's our landscaping. And that would be a 0. And then 10 would be, I don't know what 10 would be, but on the scale of 0 to 10, how expensive would this be compared to what's possible, I guess?
Sky's the limit, I guess, and it comes down to it's the same as a house. You can build 4 walls and have a roof on it, and it's all your luxurious fittings that you put into it as well. And it's very much the same thing on this too. We pulled back and reduced our garden lighting to cut costs on this one a little bit. Our plants were put in at slightly smaller sizes to help cut costs on this a little bit, because when I went to the client with the original price on the contractor, he just said, "No, it's too much, mate. We can't do it." So we did have to alter from the original design. So, there's ways that you can do that. I can design a garden and it can come in at a figure, and that garden could have a pathway in it. There's multiple options that we can do on that pathway. That pathway can stay the same sweeping pathway, but is it out of gravel? Is it out of secondhand red bricks? Are those bricks on sand? Are those bricks on a concrete base? Is that out of a marble? Same pathway, does the same thing, completely different options, completely different price tags. So yeah, sky's the limit on a lot more expensive than what people think, because gone are the days of $10,000 where you can do something in your backyard. That $10,000 does not go very far.
All right, so when you were asked on the block, now this is back 2019, so a little bit ago, you worked on the block. We talked a little bit about that experience on the last podcast, but looking at this space, it seems like you said before about it being you doing a lot of very big yards. This is tiny courtyard, right?
Yeah.
I love these vertical gardens. It just gives, it's night and day difference between just having a wall there, right? What's gone through your mind when you're planning that, thinking through that, all that jazz for a small thing like this?
This was extremely hard. Whoa, it's broken my chair. This was extremely hard. So professional. So not only is the space extremely challenging on this, but you're dealing with camera crews and 100 other tradesmen. This is in the heart of St Kilda, and that's a 3-story house. So the sunlight from that courtyard, that goes up 3 stories. So above that Juliet balcony, that just keeps going. So the soil, everything like that for this is actually craned from the street behind over the top and then lowered down into this courtyard. So logistics on this one were just an absolute nightmare. You're then working with sponsored products. You're then also working with ridiculous deadlines. Like this whole garden, this was constructed in a day and a half, which is just like the amount.
How many people is working in that?
The team working on the actual garden was 3 of us, I think, and myself and Hopkins working till all hours of night just to get this finished. We went to the dingiest backpackers bar next door and had 4 hours sleep, and then came back and kept going. This was just, we were in over our heads. We hadn't done the block before. We didn't know what to expect, and we were just thrown in the deep end on this one. Both the builders who had got us onto the program to start off with, both the builders who said they'd be around to answer questions, help out, whatever, they both had holidays booked when this courtyard was done, so neither of them were there. And it was full on. It was one hell of a baptism of fire, but we did really well. We won Viewers' Choice for this garden, and everyone seemed to really enjoy it. So yeah, it was good. But there's so much to deal with on this. It's the kitchen and the lounge room looks out onto this. All the bedrooms from the Juliet balconies look down onto this. Obviously, we can't, with our budgets and timeframes, we can't create a garden that goes from the ground to the top. But the idea was to try and take away from the overwhelming. It's quite a beautiful paneling there from Colorbond, but try and just take away from that. So we've got the vertical timbers going up the wall, we've got the vertical gardens going up, and then we've got some larger trees. On the other side of that, which you can't see in that photo, I've got star jasmine running up some stainless steel wires.
Is that on? Oh, here's a different.
Yeah,
here's a different photo here.
that's got some stainless steel wires with some jasmine running up it. And then the lush underplantings underneath that seat as well, and then all lit up nicely just to highlight it.
Yeah, well, the underplantings here.
Mm-hmm.
This is too pixelated. I can't see.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, what's that here?
I have no idea. So this is all hand selected by me, but this is literally me walking into the nursery, speaking to my trusted team of contacts that I have in there, saying that I need to create something that's going to work indoors. It's not going to get a great deal of sunlight, and I need help. And we came up with this selection on the spot, and then we installed this. But yeah, this was very, very tricky for me, this one. So I've quite often been asked the plants that I used underneath there, and I have no idea.
Well, it looks a little bit like philodendrons. I mean, I've got a lot of indoor plants, as you can tell behind me, and I love a good vertical indoor garden. Obviously, you've got the Dichondra silver falls. Again, I mean, I couldn't tell you exactly which ones these are, but
there's a real mixture in that. So that's done by a vertical specialist company that specialises in vertical gardens. And I don't want to say the wrong name, but I have gone blank though. John,
it's on here. Urban Vertical Gardens. I'll click on them and we can give them a shout out.
So John, that runs that company, is a lovely guy, and they were really good. I was driving through South Melbourne one day, and they have a beautiful corner block office, and they have the most amazing display coming down at the front of it. That I just went, well, I'm going to pull in, have a chat with these guys, and see what we can do, and just kind of went from there. So they're really
expensive though,
They are, yeah.
But I will say, like what I made behind me, and I made this from scratch. You saw my Instagram story that I put up of that. But what I made behind me, I had the wood. Because if people remember the old background, because we moved to the warehouse, we had that wood paneling background. So that's all the wood paneling has been turned into that and a different screen somewhere else in the warehouse. And the cost, if I didn't have the wood and I was to buy the wood from scratch, I would say it's probably $700, maybe $800 worth of wood. And it took me probably a day, maybe a day and a half in total time to make that. And so the pre-made options, so let's say you're charging out labor, it'd be thousands and that's not including plants. I'm just talking about the structure, right? And again, I had a lot of these plants and blah blah, but vertical gardens are expensive no matter what direction you come from, whether you're buying them or you're making them from scratch yourself.
Yeah, I think they are, but there's a lot that goes into them too. Like, you've got to have the right irrigation systems, you've got to have the right plant choices. And this is not my area of expertise. So you asked me what plants I've used underneath there. I honestly can't remember because it's not something that I specialise in. I've done it for once there, and it's not something that I deal with regularly. So I'm unsure of what we've used. In 2019, it's quite a while ago. I've built quite a few gardens since. Trying to remember exactly what I use, it's kind of hard. Whereas speaking with those guys down there, they did such a good job, and it's their bread and butter is what they specialise in, that I was able to walk in there, even though I'm pretty good in horticulture, I was able to walk in there Novice with vertical gardens, and they were able to help me out.
Well, there you go. Get a shout out. So Urban Vertical Gardens.
There you go.
There you go. urbangreenfarms.com.au. I've never talked to them before. I've never seen them before. I'm looking on the Instagram right now if you're watching. Vertical gardens are so sexy. They are so sexy, aren't they? They're just...
if they're done right, yeah, they're beautiful. But it's one of those things that when you do a garden, you've got to realise that it's a living structure, and you've got to feed it and maintain it. And people that don't do that on vertical gardens, I think because the whole thing is on display to everybody from every angle, you've really got to put the time and effort into it, or at least put in a good system there to water it. Because if you don't, they do stand out and they look horrible.
Well, this one behind me that I made, the major problem I have with this is, so I've irrigated this with what I call spaghetti line. Do I have any around here?
Just 4 mil tube.
That's it. I've got my little fittings here. There you go, people. All the little plugs. I was doing stuff. I was actually doing stuff on it last night. Here we go, down here. Give me a second. This stuff here for people who are watching on YouTube. So I've got this running. Now, this is not how professionals would do it. I guess technically I could call myself a professional. But what I've done, I've run this over the top of every single plant. And it is way too fiddly to put an individual dripper on every single one. So I've drilled a 2 mil hole, or I just poked a hole with this little guy here, depending on how much water I wanted on each one. And you just poke the hole at the right angle. And then I've run it in a loop. So the pressure equalizes. So instead of like having a line just end and then you cap it, you loop it back through to your original source. And that's what I've done. But the problem that I'm getting with this, which I have to solve, is the potting media that they use is so free draining that it's just sort of running through and ending up on the floor, which I don't care about. But I've kind of got to get this balance between not having all this water on the floor, too much water on the floor, and not underwatering my plants. So I might have to put in some, little, I don't know, retainers or whatever that's going to catch the water at the bottom of it. But anyways.
So the ones that I've dealt with, they have a drip tray at the bottom so that as it flows out of the pot, it feeds the pot below it and it goes that way. And then it picks up on a drip tray, which is then recirculated back into the top and starts the process over again. So you don't have a drip tray or anything like that?
No, because this is what I'm getting at. So people might look at what I've done and be like, I love it. It's great. The wood looks amazing. Yeah. And I do like it. And, like I said, I already had all the wood. I had to do something with it. Mm-hmm. But I'm just sort of saying this for people that, even though I've got no idea how much these vertical gardens cost from these guys, and obviously they're in Melbourne, so they're not going to be everywhere as far as I'm aware. But it's a, how would you put it? It's another one of those things that there's way more that goes into it. So catching the water, irrigating it properly, all that sort of stuff. That it's a lot more technical than what people think. And I guess if you had a vertical garden, like if we go to this and you've got a seat underneath it, you can't have any water dropping onto that seat because, not any, but like you do not want all that water dropping onto the seat and then it becomes unusable, whereas if it was above like you've seen a couple of them here where they're just kind of above a garden bed underneath.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter so much. It depends on each. There you go. It looks like artificial lawn, but it wouldn't matter if that got a bit wet. So it depends,
Same thing though. We did that seat knowing that one, it's in an open roof courtyard. Two, it's got a vertical garden above it. So that's actually built like a deck. So there's 5 mil gaps in between all those boards, so that any water that does come through can just drain through into the garden below it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, but I love the spacing that you've done here. Back to your work. I'm going to give these urban guys a follow before I move on. I hope they're not wankers. But,
John, the owner, is a really nice guy, and he was really, really good to us. So, I could not speak highly enough.
After giving him all this shout out and talking about vertical gardens and how difficult they are to make on your own and how, for most people, they should probably just go buy the pro thing. And then we just find out that we've just been promoting a business that are just absolute jerks, and it's a shame that some people, they get arrogant like that. They'd have a good, successful business and they just stop caring about customer service because, everyone's going to come anyway for whatever reason. Anyways, back to this. I love what you're doing with not making it entirely vertical garden as well, because it's sort of it blends. And I've seen that. That's when we go back to the other photo. I can't bring it up because that was on a different app. But the cobblestone style effect you had was it didn't have. I didn't talk about this, but it didn't have a hard edge. It was kind of alternating brick pattern into the garden bed. You know what I'm saying. Hopefully, I'm describing that to the audience well. And it softened it. It's the same kind of feel here. And now I'm looking at it and I'm describing it and I'm thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, I might have just put solid green there, and it would have felt like a solid block and not blend. And you were saying you were trying to break up that color bond, which looks nice, but feels a bit much if it's on its own.
Yeah, I mean, the paneling itself, the product itself is beautiful, but it's a lot on its own, and that goes up 3 stories. So it is a really tricky one that you've got to try and deal with. But yeah, it's just to try and break it all up. And then we've got the different elements and the different colors, the different contrast between the greenery and the timber, you know, and then it's one of the only times I've ever used the fake grass. It was on that design, but it was a sponsored product. That's one thing that people don't realize with the block. They sit there and they go, well, I would have done this and I would have done that. But what people at home don't realize is that you actually have to work with sponsored products. So a company come along and go, okay, well, we're sponsoring Backyard Week and this is what we've got. What can you do with that? And that's what you've got to design and build with.
I talked to Nick from Lawns and Good Nick. Do you follow him on Instagram?
Yeah,
very different.
I think he popped up after our last chat, actually.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I've done both of you guys' second episode very close together, and I think your first episodes are very close together too. Now I think about it. That's just random. But I was talking to him about the criticisms that some creators get for doing paid advertisements. But it's funny that there's a lot of that stuff that goes on TV, and it's not necessarily, how would you put it? It's not as transparent, you know, with that kind of stuff.
Like they'll have their sponsors at the end of it, and their sponsors always get a shout out because that's their marketing opportunity for them. But there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes there too, where your design is very much guided by the products that you have to work with.
Do you, when you're going on the block, right, you're getting paid, I'm assuming, for your work as well? Now, no. Here we go.
You take a hit when you go on the show.
So this is the thing. I mean, I don't know if I'm asking you questions that you're not allowed to answer, which is the best questions to ask from a podcaster. But this is one of the things that I see it's interesting where TV shows, they used to be the only show in town, you know, literally, right? Like The Block or Better Homes and Gardens or Burke's Backyard back in the day, or Backyard Blitz and all that sort of stuff. We used to grow up, and I love those shows, you know, as a kid. But that's the only options you had. And so you could have this form of, like we said before, arrogance. You're the only show in town, so, you know, suck it up. And I guess, look, you know, for you, it's a great thing on your resume to say we work for The Block, but they kind of know that, and they kind of use it, you know, and, you know, good on them. You know, it's business. That's how it works. But
you're not taking on any of those projects to make money from that initial project. You're doing that to try and boost up your it might be your following, which then more clientele come from, or just trying to put your name out there in the industry to say, like, look, I am a legit player. I'm here for the long haul, and this is what we can do.
So moving on before we get you sued. I don't know if The Block's gonna. I highly doubt The Block's gonna watch this. But if they are, you know, sorry. Moving on to some of these other photos. Oh, look at this handsome male model. Oh, it's you.
Yeah.
Joel Barnett's having a good laugh. This next section here.
Yeah.
People who, if you've ever just clicked on this, you're like, who's this Joel Barnett one? I didn't watch the first podcast. Go listen to that. This is a great comparison. So this is your, I guess, a naked hill, you might call it.
Mm-hmm.
Bare landscape. You've got the hardscapes. Now, it sounds like you've gotten that done by somebody else because you mentioned that was something that you moved on from in the past. Is that right?
No, to me, that's not hardscape. So that's rock placement. So that's done by us.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's all been formed up. So that's, us placing all those, putting all the soil and everything in.
So that's back to my complete novice. Sorry, I'll cut you off, but that's back to my complete novice because I thought hardscapes was pretty much literally anything that was hard. I understand.
No, I can understand the confusion there, but so hardscapes from my element is concreting, paving, stuff like that. I just don't do that anymore. I quite enjoy the timber work. Yeah. I guess so. I quite enjoy working with timber. I don't do a great deal of it anymore because there's other people out there that can do it faster.
Yep.
So my main thing now is that we design and then we install the softscapes. So we might do the irrigation, the turf, the soil, the big on the plants. And then if it's one of my designs, we can do ongoing maintenance from it. We've got a couple of estates that we manage and look after as well. We do a bit of viticulture work and work in the orchards and stuff. So I could do a project that's 300,000, and it could be 90% of that is softscape because of the style that we do. We do that naturalistic style. But then, so all that's done by us. And then you go across the next one and then you see all the plants and everything once they've grown and filled out. Well, not so much filled out, but that's not long after being planted. You can see the difference there.
It's night and day difference. For those who are listening, I can't describe exactly what's going on here. So you might want to jump on YouTube and just have a look. But yeah, even just obviously you've got the natural soil there, and it looks like you've put that black. Is it a carrion peat mulch or?
So in that one there, that's that'll be a water saver moisture mulch. But then in the second photo, that's all the good soil that we've brought in. So that's going from having the original soil there is not too bad.
Right. So you got original soil. You've brought in nice new soft stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And is this here path? Is that what that ends up being?
Yeah, that was all grass up the top there. And then there's another stone wall with more garden that went in there eventually as well. And
then you've got these there. And, man, you like these birches.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of birches. But moss white, so you said that people do, silver birches over there. I really like silver birches. But what I find with them is they can get a little bit twisted and go a little bit unruly. Whereas the moss white birches, they just have this beautiful straight trunk. But yeah, I love birch trees. Birch trees, buxus balls, a lot of those are used in my designs.
So, you know, I was going to ask you a question, but something came up. I reckon now I'm going to drive around. I'm just going to notice birch all the time now. Because it's like when you're looking for a certain type of car and you notice it all the time.
Yeah, you notice it nonstop.
That's what's going to happen. Because I can't think of any clients I've got who have got birch trees off the top of my head, other than the silver birch. But now I'm going to notice it everywhere. I'm going to sound like an idiot. I feel like I've outed myself as an idiot because I think they're probably going to be everywhere.
That's all right, mate. It's like me and my Photoshop clothesline before.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like we haven't talked about. I mean, hardscapes is hard stuff, right? Softscapes is plants and soil. That's what I thought. Okay. I thought like plant, soil, some reticulation. Literally the soft stuff.
It's funny, like my my Instagram and my social media, a lot of it is made up with my garden, with my meadows and my wildflowers and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a person come in on a trial, and they lasted one day. And at the end of it, they said, I don't think I'm going to come back. I don't think it's for me. And I said, "Oh, do you mind if I ask why you think that?" And they said, "Well, your social media, it's all these like beautiful meadows and flowers and stuff. I just assumed that we would be like around there and picking flowers and just,
Oh, wow.
doing like." I'm like, "Are you serious? Like that's me fluffing around in my garden. That doesn't make me any money. It's what I enjoy, but it costs me money to be out there doing it."
It's the
So
real world of being a gardener. Let's explore this idea for a second here, because we will only hire someone if they've done a trial day with us now,
yeah,
because and usually a couple, and they're paid, right? Paid trial days. And it's hard to do that for some people because they've what's the word? They've got a full-time job. They don't want to lead on to their previous employer or their current employer that they're thinking of moving on.
yeah,
But yeah, the number of people that I've had, I remember a certain lady who won't be named, who worked at a nursery, and I recognized her application because I was like, isn't this the chick? And I looked at it, I was like, yeah, I know. Like, I go to the nursery. And I was like, she's great, like, nice person. And so, called her up immediately. I was like, hey, come do a trial day. She had no idea what she was getting herself into, which is surprising because you would think that somebody who was at a nursery would talk to people, but they've just, yeah, you get the idea.
yeah. I've had people come from nurseries before too, and they don't last. I mean, we've had other people come from nurseries that have been amazing, but it's a different style of work. It's a different style of fitness. You're using different muscles. It all varies. But you look at horticulture, landscape. If we put them all under the one name, there's a lot of different subcategories in the industry. I mean, we go back to your amazing creation before of grabbing some 4mm tube and stabbing it with a screwdriver.
I would do that for clients.
There's people that specialize in irrigation.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that for a client. I'd spend the time. I'd put the drippers on. But,
yeah,
I can't be stuffed. It probably took me 2 hours to do that too. Still, because I mean, I was watching the cricket at the same time because I have TVs in here, so maybe it would have been 1 hour without the cricket distracting me. But okay, what I was getting at here now, when I look at this and what I've done in the past, when I've done plantings for my own house, or we've done a few plantings for clients over the years, and less than a dozen kind of thing, and we're 10 years in business, so hardly any. I have been planting in rows. You'll have to, like, forgive me for certain things. So, like, yeah, exactly. Look at the effect. I've grown up liking that kind of style, and noticing, like, say you have a board, and like we look at the dichondra next to the individual stepping stones that you had before, where it's kind of in a bit of a block. And I would be like, oh, if I'm looking at this, here's what I would have done. And this is why I'm not a designer, right? We're exposing the flaws in Luke's thinking. We should name this podcast Ashley James shows Luke how much of an idiot he is. Something like that. Something controversial to get people. Anyways, I would have been like, oh, look at all these beautiful rocks. Let's put a bunch of things that are kind of similar along this row, and then do a different thing in that layer and have it be like tiered, right? And I don't think it would have looked as good. I wouldn't have imagined in my head how all these different plants together would have worked that way. So what are your critiques and criticisms of my style, and why doesn't it look good?
It's not to say that it doesn't look good, because you're kind of running off even what I was trained up to do, and that is you start off with your smaller shrubs or ground covers, and you move up to your mediums, and then you finish with your large. Which,
yes, 100%. That's what I was taught.
Yep, and so was I. And so was I. And for a lot of the time that works. But it can end up in block form, which is where you're saying you plant in lines. Like, I'd never plant in a line. I always plant in triangles. So I always plant in groups of 3, or I plant in groups of 5.
Okay.
And I do it in that way that it's, once it grows, it all fills in and it just looks like one mass shrub, but then we move on to the next one. So rather than just having straight lines of everything, it's all layered and staggered in a way that when it grows and develops, all the heights vary, everything changes, and it creates a movement throughout the foliage. So again, I was trained that you do small, medium, then large, and to a large degree, you still need to do that, because if you put something too big at the front, it overshadows your smaller ground covers. They don't get the sunlight, it dies, or it's not seen by the client and the people visiting the garden. So there is a little bit of an art form to it, but I like to mix it up. And for people who don't know, one of my favourite designers, her name is Sarah Price. She's from Wales over in England. And Sarah did a lot of work with the Olympic Game Garden in London. I can't remember when they had that on there, but she's very good at creating naturalistic style plantings. And she does an amazing job, and she's gone against the mold where you've got to do small, medium, large. And the way that she intertwines it all into one, it just looks amazing. So yeah, that's that top one there with the green. That's her.
Yep.
You know, when you scroll through her work and her planting choices,
all her photos are close-ups of plants. It's like, you're talking about how good it looks from a distance, and I go on her Instagram and it's all close-ups.
If you just scroll down, you'll see some other stuff there too. So she does an amazing job of it. And you can
this is probably more like what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Still close-ups. She likes her flowers.
Yeah. And that's the same as my Instagram. Like, I have so many beautiful close-up photos of plants, and then my wife always has a go at me saying, you can't post that. You've got to post the landscape. And I go, yeah, but this one's really pretty.
You're like, don't tell me how to live my life. What you should say to your wife is you need to trust my judgment on things that are pretty, because I picked you. That's one way of thinking about it.
Yeah, that's pretty smooth, actually.
Been married for close to 9 years, so you got to practice a few of these lines. Here we go. Here's a landscape. I can see what you're saying. There's straight lines that's broken up by plants. I can see how you've gotten that inspiration from her.
She's very good with what she does. I really like her style. She's trained as a classical artist, and she's very good at painting, and you can see there, like the way that she's laid all the heights in that photograph there. Like, it's just, and that's not one of my favorite gardens of hers, but I really like her style.
Well, it's just one of the only ones she's got actual photo of the garden, not close up of the plant. No, I've scrolled for 30 seconds. What I appreciate of what you're doing and what I wouldn't have done too. So, like, if I'm making a garden, and like I said, I never do this, but the way I would think about it is, again, planting in rows and having something fairly similar. The other things that I've done over the years is using annuals and having a flower and then changing it, and adding color in with that. But what you're doing, what Sarah's doing, if you have a look at these photos, is the leaves of the plants contrast in the color, and you don't need the flowers. Now, they do flower. If we go back to yours here, I'll give Sarah a follow as well. How many people are we going to have on this? What have I done? Whoops. I've stuffed up my thing. X'd out. Oh, too many technical difficulties. I'm Xing out. I gave her a follow off the screen. You couldn't see it. But if I look in here, the birches are going yellow. It's so unhealthy, mate.
They're not dying. It's just leading to autumn.
I know. No teasing you. You've got see all these plants. These are not things that I know, which is great. Is that New Zealand flax there?
There is
something else.
Flax. That's a miscantha that you're looking at over there. We've got penstemons again. We've got sea lavenders. We've got some dogwoods. We've got forest pansies. We've got a bit of a mixture of everything kind of going through there. There's some euphorbias. Yeah, so we've got a little bit of a mixture of everything going on there, but it's just the way that it's laid out. So I do have like plants that I really like to work with and use because one, I like them, two, they're hardy and they work with the area, and three, they're easy to get. A lot of the stuff that I like is harder to get, and you can't just buy from the nursery. So I end up buying it through seed and on growing it via seed, which has its pros and cons. It makes it a lot cheaper to get it in there and to purchase it and to install it. But then I've got to wait for it to grow, and I can't get those after photos straight away. So again, pros and cons. I love annual displays. Like, to me, if you're using annuals, that's a very old school traditional style of gardening. I think it can be done in a contemporary form, and we do have a lot of annuals mixed through our seeds. But what we find is they will self-seed and will have the same plant, the same style of plant come up the following year in roughly the same area. So I'm not replacing them annually. I'm just giving them a good cut back and shake out over the winter months, and they'll self-seed, and we'll have another version of it come up the following season.
What plant is this with the red leaves?
God, we're going off iPhone. Yeah, we're going off iPhone photos now, so I don't know. Too far out. Well, have a look, get back to you.
Well, I love that hit of color, and you've got like the there's a lot of different. It's very popular these days. The kind of silver color you get from like a Westringia, certain Westringias, euphorbias, like the Dichondra silver falls we talked about before. Different things like that. That silvery with a hint of green. I mean, and then you've got all the different shades of green. Basically, it really works.
So when you were saying before, like with your foliage and textures, so I was taught that when I was doing my apprenticeship, I was taught that you always work with your foliage because you don't have your flowers for all the time. You may only have a flower display for 6 to 8 weeks. And I've probably gone against that a little bit, and I use flowers. But what I have probably changed from what I was trained is I've learned to embrace the flower heads throughout all their seasons. So you could have a beautiful spring growth come on, and it looks amazing. Then you can have a beautiful summer display of flowers, and then we can have them dying off throughout autumn, and then get the real skeleton seed heads throughout winter. And I've learned to kind of appreciate that and include that into my garden as well, or gardens as well.
This is the thing about certain plants that frustrate me, and wattles are one of these.
Oh.
Wattles, when they flower, honestly, that a wattle in full flower is one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
If they flowered for a little bit longer, oh my goodness, I'd have them everywhere. Right, especially those little I can't remember what they're called now, but there's some little pom-pom ones. They're native to here in WA. Like they're, I would say, 30 centimeters by maybe 40 centimeters, like tiny little things. They've got sharp little prickles on them. But they're all through the bush, probably 45 minutes inland from where I am now. When I drive through the country in certain points of the year, when it's a little bit, sort of winter, everything's end of winter, I think, they're flowering. They're fantastic, but it lasts 3 weeks. I don't know, 2 weeks, 4 weeks. It depends on, and it's such a shame because they are magnificent plants. So many different wattles. But I can think of other ones. A bottle brush is another one, which, I mean, they're a bit of a pain in the butt sometimes. They drop so much. But in flower, a bottle brush just covered in those red bottle brushes, you're like, oh, that's gorgeous. And then it just is for the rest of the year.
Yeah, but you've got to. So you could say the same thing with the cherry blossoms over in Japan. Okay, now
true.
The cherry blossoms in Japan are known worldwide for how beautiful and amazing they are. That display could be there for 2 weeks. The wind could come through, and then it's fully gone. Yeah. But we need that time. We need that time without those flowers to appreciate how much we love those flowers. So it's like saying. People hate winter, but you need winter to appreciate summer.
Do you know what? Like I showed you the photo of the road verge. in Perth. It does make what's really interesting is a lot of our lawns are struggling right now.
Mm-hmm.
You look at a photo of them, and the thing is though that they're so green and healthy compared to an unmaintained lawn, or compared to, like, if you compared the photos between what they would look like in, say, September, October, November to what they're looking like now, they're not as good. They're struggling because we just had no rain. And in April, they'll be off the charts, you know.
Yeah.
But compared to the roadside verge, they're, yeah, you get the idea. And it's probably what you're trying to say. It's like, it's a comparison thing. But smart people like yourself, not to puff you up too much, Joel Barnett will get very upset. But smart people will use, and I've seen this. Let's take the wattle, for example. So say a small wattle tree, not like a shrub.
Mm-hmm.
You could have things around it that flower at different times, or maybe draw the attention. So not that a wattle is ugly, but they're kind of a bit messy and kind of a bit certain. Obviously, there's so many different varieties, so it's Anyway,
the thing I don't like about wattles, and I know that you're just using this as an example, but the thing that I don't like about wattles is you plant them, it takes ages for them to kind of grow and fill up and look good. So you might plant a wattle, you wait 5 years, for the next 2 years it looks amazing when it flowers, and then it just falls down, breaks, turns to crap, and just destroys your chainsaw as you try and cut it up. It just blunts every single blade, and it's just horrible. So I think wattles in flower are beautiful, but I'd never plant a wattle because I just can't be bothered dealing with it. But again, I know that you were just using that as an example. So you are right. That may only flower for 2 weeks, but then you've got all this stuff around it which will flower throughout different times. And that wattle may not be in flower anymore, and it may not be the showstopper that it once was, but it does create a beautiful backdrop for everything else to look good against. And that's where we were saying, like the fences before. You get in there, you spray paint your fences because it makes a great backdrop for the green to go in front of it, which then pops and stands out. So that wattle then becomes, some kind of like a borrowed landscape because it makes everything else in front of it look really good.
We had a school we used to work at, and I was dissing on the callistum, the bottle brush before, and by the way, callistum is one of my favorite names because I guess from technicality it means beautiful ovaries. I don't know if you ever thought about that before, because a stymon would be the female, because it's beautiful stymon. Cali means beautiful, and callistum is beautiful stymon, right? Because all the little stymons sticking out of the flower, right? But stymon would be the female reproductive part, right? Unless it's the other way around. Again, actually, James shows Luke how much of an idiot he is. But no, it's just me confessing all my lack of knowledge. But yeah, it's either beautiful sperm or beautiful ovaries. Anyways, but the bottle brushes, we had a bottle brush hedge. It was an informal hedge. I'd say it's probably 30 or 40 meters long along a car park, 2.5, 3 meters tall, so roughly the height of a gutter. And we hedged it quarterly in the school holidays, but it was a very, very light trim. And I might find, I'll see if I can find, if I put it on our Instagram at some stage. So, but it was a very light trim. It's probably a while ago since I posted, because we haven't worked there in a while. Well, something went wrong. Don't tell me having more internet issues. But it worked because we didn't try and make it formal, and there was enough of them that it had this. Sometimes with hedging, you create such a formal shape, and it's kind of like, look at me, attention seeking. Look how straight this is, which I love, and I love those types of hedges too. We talked off here about Miles Baldwin and Paul Bangay and some of the designs that they've done over the years. And you have these beautiful, I don't think I can find it on here, unfortunately, but you might have these really beautiful, I've given up on that, beautiful looking straight hedges. But as soon as they go messy, they look horrible. And we had this hedge, we were able to shape it and it looked like it was a natural hedge for most of the year. Didn't draw attention to itself. Kind of didn't know it was there. It was just green. And then when it flowered, my goodness, and it didn't quite fill out as heavily as some of the other ones can, which was, it had the benefits because it didn't fill the car park with red things. But yeah, I think I've seen that one work. But yeah, often they get straggly and all that jazz.
It's a hard thing with certain types of plants too. Like some things need to be clipped regularly, and then if you let them go too long, then they become too woody and you can't bring them back under control, and they'll just break and die off. It all just comes down to the right plant choice for the right garden, I guess.
Yeah, and that's one thing that struggle with natives. And kangaroo paws are another one where you get these beautiful flowers, but then you got to cut them back, and they kind of, if you've got a mass planting of kangaroo paws and you just cut them all back, it's kind of
like a dark version of dieties.
Dieties.
Looks kind of, yeah. Well, I love kangaroo paw flowers. I think they look beautiful. Mass planted, they look beautiful. And when you get the flower heads come up off them, I think they look amazing. But then when they're cut back, and I'm just looking at the grasses, it's like I can't see past like a dieties car park. It's too similar.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. Like that car park look. I mean, I'm thinking about jobs we've done in car parks at commercial facilities, and they've just gone, here's a mass planting of kangaroo paw. And when they're in flower, you drive in and you're like, oh, that's spectacular. Especially like we've had some that are like 7 foot tall. Like, I had a guy on my team who was like 6'4". I've got some photos on my phone of he was 6'4", and the flowers were taller than him. Beautiful yellow flowers. Probably I would say 50 meters long. This section of car park. Pain in the ass to cut because you know how itchy they are. When they get all over you, and there was hundreds of them. But you cut them down and you do the best you can. It just looks so bad after you've cut it down. You need something else to break it up, and that's where you're talking about planting in triangles, 5s, 3s. 5 doesn't make a triangle. What shape would you make with a 5? 6 makes a triangle. Is that right? Yeah.
No, so I do it as 5, and it creates, I suppose, 2 triangles next to it. So you do 3 at the back, and then in between you do 2, and that just creates this nice little V shape, I guess.
Okay. Yep. I see what you mean.
Yeah.
So it's not like a literal bowling alley 10 in a row, perfectly planted.
No, because then you might just plant. Well, then it's going to line up because you might not plant it in lines. If you just do that perfect 3 everywhere, then perfect 3 or 5 everywhere, it's still going to create lines just from a different angle.
And that's what we come back to with the informal hedge style. As soon as when it's formal and when it's got those lines, as soon as those lines become messy, you feel like you need to trim it. It doesn't have that satisfaction, because that's the thing about the limes, lawn stripes, straight hedges. There's something so satisfying about a natural thing being straight, perfectly straight. It's so rare, but the work needed for it is so much higher. And your style is so different. It flows. It looks landscaped. It doesn't look like someone's thrown a bunch of plants into a garden, but it doesn't draw the eye in such a way when it starts getting a little bit grown. This is the same garden here, right?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I mean, look at that. That's night and day different. Hey, you've doubled up that photo.
I know, I made a mistake on that. So from 2021, mate, give me a break.
I don't think I will. I think, like we said before, your kids are going to disown your wife is calling divorce lawyer as we speak. Anything else coming to mind as we're talking about this? I'm moving on to the next photos, but anything else we're staying on with this for people who are starting out?
Probably from a garden design point of view, one of the questions that we ask in our briefing is who's going to maintain it? Is it going to be you? Are you going to have a team? If it is you, how much time a week do you have to put into the garden? If it's a team, what's your budget for them to maintain it? Because these are all things that you need to know, because there's no point in building an extremely formal garden, like you just said, that when everything starts to get overgrown and look woolly, it just doesn't work with the design and looks crap. So these are questions that we will ask clients as we move forward with the design, or as we start with the design, really.
It's probably good to give a ballpark on what you think the maintenance will cost as well, or even have people who know specialize in maintenance.
So we will provide maintenance on my designs. So I'm happy to work on my gardens from a maintenance point of view, because again, I'm not just going in there as a Jim's mowing person. I'm in there to do productive gardens. So we'll be tinkering through the vegetable gardens. We'll be tinkering with the fruit trees. We'll be working with the perennials. We'll be working with the annuals, and then then you've got your general maintenance on top of that. I'll have a lot of climbing roses in my designs, and you get your winter pruning with that. You've got the winter pruning with the orchards. It's a working garden.
Well, is there any other Jim's mowing stuff you'd like to throw them under the bus anymore?
Yeah, sorry, Jim.
I know what you mean. What you're talking about is the contractor who's working from a standpoint of efficiency, and for them, they're working for a different type of client.
Oh, 100% they are, and they might just do. I'm not trying to knock them, but they might specialize in doing lawns and nature strips, for argument's sake. That's fine, but for you to do the nature strips, like, you've got to then set up such a dense run to be able to go through to make that worth your while. Whereas for me, I could land one client who's going to spend $150,000, $200,000 on a garden. That's a lot of nature strips I've got to go and mow.
Yeah.
So
that's at least
just
4.
Yeah, for you.
Yeah, we're not charging that much. But I mean, to be fair, there's great money in this. I think this is the one the completely off topic of garden design.
There's really good money in it if you can make. I've said this before. So with maintenance, to make money in maintenance, you can't be in the middle. You need to either go hard and you don't care the work that you're doing. You're just doing the work to pay the bills. So you might be smashing out 12 nature strips and blowing down a supermarket car park. Okay, that supermarket car park is not going on your Instagram. That's not winning you any awards, but you could make really good money from it. Or you need to specialize and go high end to a boutique clientele and just go, I'm here, this is what I can do, but that's what I'm charging you. And if you're not interested in it, then get someone else. So you can make good money from it, yes.
Well, I'm working on a online course at the moment that we're going to sell. Hopefully I'll release it in a month or so. And it's targeted for people who are wanting to start their own business, or who have started and maybe are struggling a little bit and they need some support. And it's kind of for those people who are halfway between maybe wanting to go down a franchise because they want that support and they want an education on it, and people who really just want to be on their own though. And one of the things that is super underrated is these nature strips, because the hourly rate that you can get from that is in the hundreds. And I don't mean like 100, I mean 200 plus. And the reason is that back when we used to do this kind of work, and it's only not this year, last year, 2023, that we completely stopped that. And that was for different reasons. If I was to start a lawn mowing business that was, say I'm the type of person who I like making people happy. Maybe I've been a chef, or I've been an accountant, or I've been somebody who worked indoors, and I want to get outdoors. I love working outdoors. I don't have 15 years experience. I don't have a Cert 3, but I love working outdoors. I love working with my hands. I would go and start a business in an area that has a lot of these new houses with tiny lawns. And the reason is that you can charge a $40 minimum. And some lawn contractors hearing me say this are going, $40 way too cheap. Listen, you get 10 lawns that are $40 that take you between 5 and 10 minutes, right? And you get them with 2 minutes travel time between. You do the maths on that says 5 minutes and 2 minutes travel time. You're getting $40 from 7 minutes worth of work. You can do 8 of those in an hour. 8 times 40, what's that? 8 times 40. Yeah, it's $240, isn't it? Oh, gee, now I've stuffed myself here. But how can I not get that right off the top of my head? 8 times 40, 163.20. Yeah, there we go. So it's $320 an hour from or within 1 hour from $8 to $40 jobs. And the thing is that people don't realize is you living now. You've got land, right, Ash? How much land are you living on?
20 acres.
Your budget for maintenance, let's say, I'm going to make some nice round numbers here. Let's say you've got your next door neighbors on 20 acres and they own, let's say, $100,000 a year. Okay. There's not much money left to pay to maintain 20 acres. You know, you got a couple of kids, you send them to school, this, that, whatever. You get someone who's $100,000 a year, same job. They just don't want the 20 acres and they've got 15 to 30 square meters of Fifth Tough or, you know, Sir Walter Buffalo out the front of their yard. $40 a fortnight? Shut up and take my money. You know what I mean? The same person might have. So what I'm saying is your next door neighbor might work at the same place as somebody else named, you know, Bob, and your next door neighbor Cindy is, you know, struggling to find a contractor to pay because she's got all this money, all this land, and her money doesn't stretch. So what I'm getting at is your $40 minimum. So many people will accept that, and they think you're the best thing since sliced bread. But your hourly rate is hundreds of dollars an hour, and you get 15 of those in a day at $40. What's that? $600 in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Like that is the way to go. Chuck on some weed sprays, chuck on some fertilizer. And anyway, so I've been working on this in this course and doing all the spreadsheets and maths and stuff and just talking to people about that. And anyway, so that's just a little tangent because I feel like there's people, and I'm not.
Like, you can make good money from that, but then your route density needs to be. You need a lot of clients. So, we talked about the block before, for argument's sake, right? So everybody knows Dave Franklin. He's from the block. Dave and I were having a chat a little while ago, and a very well-known name because of all the TV work that he's done. Dave is now focusing on that higher end client because then he only needs to land 3 to 5 clients a year, and his turnover is, you know, still very good.
Insane, yeah.
So, you know, you are right with what you're saying. It can make your hourly rate incredibly good, but you need a lot of clients to be able to produce that.
Well, this is a thing that we've done that's well, which we're going to teach in the course. I feel like this is just it's like a product placement in a movie. You know, when someone's drinking like some Coke and they drink it in a certain way and the Coke logo is there. You know what I mean? It's like, I kind of feel like I'm doing that for my own podcast.
Like when you said before you wanted to get sponsored by KFC and then you just did the slogan, "Shut up and take my money." Yeah, I see what you're up to there, mate.
I didn't even notice. I was thinking of Futurama. I was thinking of the Futurama meme. All right, I'm being honest. I'll just tell you what. Although I do watch a lot of cricket, and that ad is that's like half the ads on the cricket at the moment. It gets really annoying after a while. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh yeah, so I was looking this up. In 10 years, we've had about 5,000 people added to our software system for the business. And there are ways, and we service, for most of that, we've serviced for probably 7 years, and a radius that was probably, I would say, 25 kilometers radius. So I would say maybe 3,500 of those are within that area. But in that area, you're talking about, let's say, just thinking off the top of my head, maybe there's 80,000 homes in that area.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we're not even at 10% of the homes. You know, 8,000 would be 10% of the homes. There might be 100,000 homes in that area. It may be more. But this is the thing. Like, if you 2 minutes travel time, you can have an area with 10,000 homes, and you can do 20 homes in that area that are all 2 minutes from each other. And 20 out of 10,000 is nothing. But you've got to have good marketing systems and ways of getting jobs that get that route density. And I think that's where a lot of people fall short. Yeah. And I also think, here's some free advice for people. Find another contractor, right? And let's say you work different suburbs, you get along with them, switch all your clients. If they've got a bunch of clients in a certain suburb and they travel out to there, but you got 10 clients there, they got 3. Say, I'll take your 3 and you can have my 3 vice versa. And now you've both got 13 clients in a smaller area and you both save the travel time. Just keep handing each other jobs. Partner with somebody like that because, those people are not really your competition. If you don't really want to work there and they don't really want to work where you are, partner with them and switch around. Anyways, what are we going to say?
It comes down to the area too. You're 100% spot on with everything that you're saying there. But like I look at my area, my hometown is less than 2,000 people. And when you're saying that how far budgets and stuff like that go, that's one thing that we really struggle on the properties that we work on is you need a really big budget to make to do a landscape on these size properties. The beauty of what we do is we can pick up on a lot of borrowed landscape because we have these really nice mountain backdrops. So we can frame that with garden beds and use the borrowed landscape. But, a budget of, say, $100,000 is going to go a lot further on a suburban block than what it would on a country property.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just, it's chalk and cheese.
You get these certain clients in those areas, like, say, wedding venues, where it's like they don't care. I mean, we talked about this on your last podcast, how you used to do a lot of those. And when COVID happened, you lost that work because of no weddings were happening. Yep. But my understanding of those kind of venues is if they're successful, they're like just, whatever it needs to take as long as the results are there. Because every weekend somebody's coming through taking photos. You want it to look good. That is their marketing, So
a lot of those wedding venues now too, they've cottoned onto it and they will employ a full-time gardener themselves. So rather than having a contractor come through, they'll actually employ their own team because then they're on hand all the time. They can help out with extra duties. They can make sure that the property is looking $1 million all the time. If they have a wedding during the week, it can be blown down and cleaned up quickly. And it's working out cheaper for them to do that because they get a contractor come through and charge a much higher rate because they've got to cover all their overheads, as opposed to putting an employee on and they cover that stuff. A lot of people are doing that now too.
So looking at this garden here, you've broken your own rule. Look at that row. Look at that row of things there along the border.
Go to the next photo.
Okay, the next photo. Oh, looks great.
Bang.
That's lavender, right? Is that lavender?
That's a dwarf salvia. So yes, it's in a row, but to me, I think that looks nice.
There you go. What's this over here? Is this the same thing that you planted at the other property, the first one we looked at?
I do use them a bit. That's a wallflower. So I do use them a little bit. And then you got some hot lip salvias there as well. And then a Japanese maple coming out of the middle of it all there too. So something a little bit different. That's quite an old project of mine. I think was done probably around 2018.
Oh, was it? Okay.
I reckon that other photo was taken then, but yeah, probably about 2018 that was put in. So that's quite an older one of my photos, but I just always liked the way that kind of tied in and worked together.
Are we looking at all these old
small form?
Right. I was just gonna say, are we looking at all these old photos because you haven't done any good work for 3 years? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, if you ask Joel Barnett, that's what he would say.
He would say you haven't done any good work ever.
Yeah, he wouldn't, but I still beat him on the front yard of the block.
Did he do the block the same year that you did it?
Yeah. So that courtyard that we did, I can't remember who won that courtyard. I didn't win it, but I got viewer's choice. And that's the main thing, if you ask Joel, his opinion anyway. So Joel won courtyard week, and then we beat Joel on front yard. So, but every time I ask him, he always says, he goes, "Oh, no one cares about the front yard."
Well, I disagree. I like the front yard. Courtyards are kind of, I think they're maybe from a landscaper's perspective, they are challenging. Front yards typically better light, typically a bit more open. You don't have to crane things in. So maybe from a landscaper's perspective,
it did.
a really good courtyard.
Every house had a palm tree craned into it from the back alleyway. It was just next level logistics. It was, again, crazy.
TV money.
That's it. Yep. Actually, I think Joel Barnett sponsored that with his own personal money.
He's got so much, doesn't he?
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Well, can we talk about, let's talk about the money for a second here. And I think I did talk about this to Joel when he came on. For those who haven't caught on, this is a joke. We don't really hate Joel. Although having said that,
we don't?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that for the outward appearance. Inside is full of, yeah, exactly. I don't want to be sued. But you know, I don't want to criticize people who host second-rate podcasts. You know, it's kind of shooting down. You know what I mean? I just don't want to. I just feel like I'm, you know, you know what I mean? It's like the big bully. I don't want to be the big bully, the big guy punching the small little kid. You know. I mean,
taking Joel's lunch.
Joel's got about 4 episodes, so I don't want to shoot him too much. You know. Anyways, what was I saying? Oh, talking about the money side of it is something I have talked about with Joel and yourself on the phone and other landscape designers. It's actually quite difficult to get a consistent financial response. That's a very technical way of saying it, but for the layman's terms, it's hard to make consistent money. Sometimes you're making bank. It's rain or it's shine. It's some things you have massive challenges and you lose money on a project. You know, 5, 10, 15, 20, $100,000 if you're doing massive stuff, you know, commercial stuff. And then others, you're making absolute bank on it. That sounds like a stressful business.
The reason why that happens is because you come into this job. You don't come into this job to get rich. You come into this job because you love it. And a lot of people come into this job almost like they're an artist and they're creating a form of art. And if that means that they need to sacrifice financially to complete that piece of art, then that's what happens.
Yep.
So, you know, that might sound a little bit airy-fairy and a little bit silly, but I honestly think that's true. Because I've done it myself where I'll sacrifice my profit margin to go and buy extra plants because I think it just looks better with the extra plants in there. So, yeah, you can earn a consistent living from it if you're doing, for argument's sake, say regular maintenance. Landscaping, there's so many unknowns where it can go up and down. You can have stuff bite you in the bum that you haven't quoted for, you haven't allowed for. And then if you're kind of somewhere in the middle like myself, you can get lost and get lost to your heart, I guess, because you want to produce a really nice piece of art.
Who do you think is a more successful financially business? Is it, because you kind of a spectrum, is it the people who do it to a price point and smash them out and do not care? And I'm talking long term, or is it long term more? And I mean, okay, let's define success. Longevity in the industry would be one thing, because you might last 2 years smashing out some landscapes and then burn out. Longevity, enjoyment, reputation, you know, maybe you start off slow doing a higher end, more thoughtful, cared for thing, but over time maybe it's better. I don't know. What would you say if someone's starting out and they're just thinking financially, which path is better?
I mean, you've got to look at it with your head, I guess. If you want to do finance, you've got to look at it with your head and go, okay, well, it makes sense for me to charge this much money and not do these extras because I'm not making money from that. From my point of view, I've always said that I spend the majority of my life at work, so why not do something that I love and enjoy? And I enjoy creating gardens. I'm never going to become a millionaire from doing that, but I enjoy my job. I've done this for over 20 years and I still enjoy and get massive satisfaction from what I have in my head, putting it on paper to then constructing it on site. So, you know, I enjoy work. I'm happy at work. Can you put a price on that?
So we do have to wrap up soon, Ash, for time. everyone's got a life. You've got a family. But one thing I did want to ask on this subject, so going down this path of career, one of the things that I've thought about, and I feel like we can talk about this for hours and hours. When you look at businesses, there's certain landscaping designers, things like that. There's certain, in every niche, cars, food, whatever, there's certain people who become very famous. Let's take Gordon Ramsay for an example. Incredibly famous chef. Is he the best chef in the world? Most famous chef in the world. Is he the best chef in the world? Well, he's good. I mean, I'm not the person to evaluate that, but there may be somebody in the middle of nowhere who is just a genius, and their restaurant is just amazing, but they don't have the marketing behind them. They never went on TV. They don't have this and that. And so maybe the best food in the world is cooked by some, I don't know, maybe the best food in the world is there's an Indian lady in New Delhi who makes the best curries anyone's ever heard of, and she's a genius, and she just cooks for a family. You know what I mean?
I don't doubt that. And then from like a garden point of view, so let's just, state the obvious. Say Paul Bangay, for argument's sake. He's a very, very well-known designer in Australia and throughout the world. He does he does an amazing job, credit to him. He's been in the industry a long time. And I think if you weren't good at what you did, you would be found out fairly quickly. He's been doing it for a long time. He's written a lot of books on it. Paul is very good at what he does. Paul's also very good at promotion, and he's had a lot of he's worked for it, but he's had a lot of promotional opportunities there to get his name out to the households of Australia and worldwide. Again, credit to him because he's amazing at what he does. Another designer whose work is just as amazing, but isn't a household name, is Eugene Gilligan. Okay, Eugene Gilligan runs Eugene Gilligan Garden Design.
Is that on Instagram? Can I get these photos up? Because I've never heard of Eugene.
Yep.
So EU, I'm assuming.
Yep. Eugene Gilligan.
There we go.
So that's top one there. Yep. So now Eugene is not as well known as what Paul is, but Eugene's work is as amazing as any of Paul's. He's, you look at the detail of his work, it's just incredible. Yeah. His designs are sophisticated. They are beautiful. They are timeless. They are just, amazing. But he's not as well known to people as he's not a household name. Whereas I would say Paul Bangay, and even if you're not huge into gardens, a lot of people would have still heard of Paul Bangay or Stonefield. Eugene, same era, probably just doesn't promote himself in the same way. If you run it from a business point of view, they're probably both making the same amount of money and probably charging a very high design rate for their work, which, fair enough, they both produce amazing quality work. But Eugene is not that household name.
Yeah, true. I'm looking at these photos. People go on this Instagram. It's called Eugene Gilligan Design. Just straight. No hash, no underscores or anything. Beautiful dark greens, and this paving style that kind of. Now, as the guy who's likely to be called to maintain this kind of property, that edging looks like a pain in the backside, but it's amazing. And you just charge accordingly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Beautiful designs. Beautiful. Why can't Joel Barnett do something good like this?
Just he's stuck with the yuckers, I guess.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's probably all it is. On a serious note, has Eugene been on a podcast before? Has he been on Joel's?
No, I don't. No, he hasn't actually. I've listened to Joel's episode, and he hasn't been on there.
Yeah, but Joel, get your act together, mate. You're the guy for this kind of stuff. Yeah. And we know Joel will be listening right now.
Yeah, we do. But no, Eugene's amazing. So it's not to say that every household name is necessarily the best. And there's a lot of up and coming stars out there that are amazing too. You look at when Charlie Albone first went over to Chelsea Garden Show, and that probably would have been around 2016 when he was over there sussing it all out. And there were two young brothers coming up that nobody had heard of, Rich Brothers Landscaping, again from Wales over in the UK. No one had heard of them. They did Chelsea Garden Show, then landed a TV gig over there in the UK. And, you know, a couple of young guys, and now they're some of the most sought-after designers throughout the UK. So there's always up-and-comers coming through. And then people, you know, you look at a designer like Lily Sabo. Lily and I have worked on the block together. She designed the courtyard that Joel built on the block in 2019. She's a great designer, very contemporary, does some amazing work. And then you follow where she's worked throughout the years. She worked for Paul Bangay for a bit. You go back to, say, Robert Boyle, who in my opinion is one of the best garden designers, landscape designers in Australia. He does amazing, beautiful work. He's from out my way. And he's trained up, you know, some of the most amazing people in the industry. He's trained up, like I know Josh Norman came from there. Nathan Burkett, who is now one of the main names in the landscape architecture business, he comes from Robert Boyle. So, you know, even if we've got those household names that are very well known, they're also helping to create and train up the next generation of amazing designers as well.
Did you say Robert Boyle?
Yep.
Do you realise that he was like a famous chemist?
I do actually, because I googled Robert Boyle trying to get onto his website, and then got redirected to like these old photos, and I was like, "This is not what I was after at all."
I was like, I googled this on the off screen, and every general chemistry student learns of Robert Boyle, 1627 to 1691, as the person who discovered that the volume of a gas decreases with increasing pressure, and vice versa. I mean, I'm glad that the designer Robert Boyle has gone on to have a successful career in his own right, but you kind of have some pretty shoes to fill if 400 years later people still remember your name. You know, you've got to get some pretty damn good landscape designs to live on that long, you know.
Oh, it's out there, mate. You look at Capability Brown, you look at Edna Welling, you know, it's definitely out there. There's names that live on.
Well, talking about living on, this podcast can't do that forever because we're going to have to end this. And, mate, thank you for your time again. I feel like we've done 5 hours of podcasting, and you just talked about a bunch of people. If we had time, I would have been like, okay, tell me about these people. Tell me about these greats of the past. I know nothing about. And again,
the hard thing. Like, we're both two very passionate people about the industry, so we could sit here and talk about it for hours. One, both of our wives are going to crack it because we're out just talking about gardens. And two, if we release a podcast that goes for 13 hours, Joel Barnett is the only one that is going to listen to the full 13 hours. And that is because he just wants to hear what digs we've had at him.
Well, I will say that our last episode, almost 60% of people finished on Spotify, finished the 3 hours.
That's pretty impressive.
I feel like we complement each other in the sense that I know nothing about landscape design and you know nothing about everything else. So... okay. Joel's probably going to enjoy that little dig.
Even my wife didn't listen to that 3 hour one.
My wife doesn't listen to Eddie. I mean, I've got 50 something episodes, and there's a few of them. My sister-in-law messaged me, and she's like, "Have you seen this guy on the internet? Like, he would be a great podcast." And it was Tim the Lawnmower Man, and it's like, yes, Tennille, we've already done that podcast. Yeah. You know, thanks for supporting. You know
I'm pretty sure his podcast is pinned to the top of your page.
It actually might be.
Yeah.
I'm not even joking. Like him and Ben Sims, and I think Craig from Southern Cross. They might be.
He's a good bloke, Craig.
He is. Anyways, before we move on to anything else and then keep talking. See, we can't stop ourselves.
That's it, man.
Goodbye, Ash. Thank you for coming on. Me. And
the next one.
Thank you for reminding me about KFC. I haven't had that in a while, and that's what I'm having for dinner tonight. So
enjoy your dinner.
People, jump on his Instagram, and we'll see you in the next podcast.